You're listening in to Parenting Paused, and I'm Leslie Potter, and we are in the middle of a four-part series, in a way. I started about 3 weeks ago, talking about cooperation versus compliance. And we're going to talk a little bit more today about what happens, again, in this cycle. So first, we decide we want cooperation. And yet, most of the time, we have this little niggling template inside that actually is asking for compliance. When we step into the role that we know it's best, we think we have all of the rules set of what our children need to do. We aren't so interested in cooperation, even though we may say that. We really want compliance because we got a lot to do. We're in a hurry. We need our kids to just do what we ask them to do and, get going with it. So as we talked about, when we're in that mode, when we have that energetics coming toward our children and they put up some resistance, rightfully so, I want you to know that, because they're feeling our really deep charge of, you need to do what I'm asking you to do. And we talked about in our or in our podcast around cooperation. Remember how that feels to you. When someone does that to you, you're going to put up that barrier, right? And so now the next step that happens is when our children roll their eyes, slam that door, throw a fit, run off away from us, then we catch this energetic charge of rage, which is so incredibly hot. And if we don't know how to work with it, which most of us don't, then that rage projects out, right? We talked about that in the second one. So if you want to know a little bit more about this, you just listen to this one, go back and listen 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. You'll hear more about the energetics of rage. We act out often on our children, and then of course we collapse, because once you release an energetic charge that's that intense, you kind of collapse in. And last week we talked about the energetics of disappointment, how that collapse has us throw up our hands often, feel like the victim, and say, just forget it then, just do whatever you want. We feel so defeated and disappointed. And then often the next piece that comes after that disappointment is a feeling of guilt. Guilt is so pervasive and often in parenting. Now, I'm going to give you a definition of guilt for you to play with and work with guilt being the refusal to be intimate with the moment, which means to be intimate with whatever is coming up inside of you. Instead of moving into beating yourself up, self-aggressing toward your children, to truly sit down in and feel what is happening in your body, your being, and in your relationship with your children. Guilt is an easy way to go up in our minds and to move away from the intensity of this cycle that we're talking about, of all that went on internally. So if we turn away from ourselves instead of turning toward ourselves, it's easy to wallow a bit in guilt. So this week, when you see this cycle, you want cooperation, you're really moving toward asking for compliance or demanding compliance. Your children don't do what you ask, so you feel the rage rising up inside. You act it out because you're not able to contain it. And then you collapse into that disappointment of, why is it like this? And then the next layer, you start that self-aggression into guilt. If you notice that this week, when you get to that guilt, just ask yourself, am I willing to be intimate with this moment inside of myself, with all that's moving through? with all the stories, with all the thoughts, with all the beliefs that are going on in my mind, with all the sensations in my body, with all the feelings that I'm aware of? Am I willing to turn toward myself and offer myself an intimate embrace? Just an intimate embrace. It could be just taking your hands, wrapping them around yourself, putting your hand on your heart, and offering the deepest kindness in that moment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parenting Paused. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor and share it with your mama friends. You can also leave a review wherever you listen, which will support getting the Purejoy message out. Come on over to the Purejoy Parenting Practice Facebook page or join me on Instagram to hear more. And don't forget to download your free copy of the Safe Seat course on the Purejoy website. And while there, check out the offerings page to go deeper in the Purejoy work.